Welcome back, my fellow Brew Bros and Brew Sisters. This is Magus the Brew, number 3, the podcast where we contrive Common Decks and Commander, crack them and cold ones at the same time. But in honor of our newest Wooburg commander, Jodah Archmage Eternal, we're drinking the Wooburg of cocktails, the Long Island Iced Tea. So my school semester just officially ended the last week, so a lot of it was a long semester, but I'm glad it's over. Equal parts rewarding and a little bit of trial and tribulation. The usual school bullshit. So I admittedly hadn't had a chance to play Commander really at all. So, and a large of that, just with being busy, that was kind of a large impetus for me starting this channel was just because of I had a lot of new commanders coming out because of Dominaria and a lot of pent-up brewing energy, so I had to channel it somehow, so why not into a YouTube channel? So one of the newest commanders that caught my eye was Jodah Archmage Eternal, or Yoda, as some people like to say, but for the sake of this podcast, we'll be referring to him as Jodah. He is a Wooburg commander, as said before. His cost is Jeskai, though. He's a blue, a red, and a white. And he has the Fist of the Sun's ability, the Infinity Gauntlet of Magic from Fifth Dawn, stapled onto him. So you may pay Jesus. You may pay Wooburg instead of the mana cost for spells you would play. I think initially when I first saw him, I think the most obvious Jodah build would probably be to use his ability to cast something like Enter the Infinite and then just win the game from there. And, then you get to play like 5-color good stuff. You get to play Demonic Tutor and pretty much all the good cards in Commander. So you could do it that way. But since I hadn't had a chance to play in a while, I really wanted to show up with something like spicy to my LGS. So I built a Jodah Hypergenesis deck. It's a fun one. So Hypergenesis is a Time Spiral card. It has no its convert mana cost is 0, but you can't actually cast it. You have to suspend it, which means you just remove counters off on your upkeep or whatever. And so starting with you, each player may put a artifact, land, creature, or enchantment from their hand onto the battlefield, and you repeat this process until nobody does, and everybody's out. It's based on the old card Eureka from Legends, which the deck also plays. That one actually says permanent though, so it's a little bit better, but whatever. Different cards, whatever. And since we can't actually cast this card, we have a few tricky ways of casting it. Actually, one of the ways we can actually just cast it off Jodah if we want to. That's not ideal though, because that's having our commander out, whatever. So we play all 4 Cascade cards that cost 3. Cascade is when you play a spell, remove the top cards of your library until you reveal a non-land card that costs less. And the way this takes a certain deck building requirements that you have to make sure that since all the Cascade spells that we play cost 3, the only thing that can cost less than 3 is Hypergenesis. So that means that no matter what happens, we'll always hit Hypergenesis. Unless Hypergenesis is in your hand, but we have ways around that. But and then that allows you to cast Hypergenesis for free, since you can't normally cast it. If Hypergenesis is in your hand, though, we do play As Foretold. Just because sometimes I know Hypergenesis is one of the 99 and the chances that you draw it are pretty slim, but sometimes you do. So As Foretold is in the deck too, and as you know, all these spells cost 3, and that is because we run all the Transmute cards. Transmute is just you can pay they'll take 3 mana depending on various colors, whatever. You discard that card, search your library for something that costs the same convert mana cost, put it in your hand. And since all of our like I said, all the Cascade cards and As Foretold all cost 3. Transmute cards just kind of double as additional copies of those cards. And we still play Intuition or whatever, good tutors. One of the newest tutors we get to play, though, which is actually kind of cool, is Supply and Demand. It's a split card. And with the Amonkhet rules change on account of everybody doing ridiculously broken things in Modern with breaking and entering, normally before the Amonkhet rules change, you would have cascaded and hit supply, and we don't want to cast any saplings, and we'd cast 0 saplings, so it'd be stupid. But they changed the card, so now the card is both the combined converted mana cost of both halves. So this actually card has a converted mana cost of 5 now, so you actually won't hit it when you cascade, And the demand part is search your library for any multicolored card and put it into your hand. All the Cascade cards that we need are all multicolored. It's, a supply and demand's not the best card, but it's cool that we get to use it now. That's a very recent rules change. Obviously, something like Grim Tutor would be better in this slot, but not everybody has $200 to spend on a Magic card. So outside of that, like the main entire goal of the deck is cast Hypergenesis, put a huge ton of fatties directly into play. But like I said, we also run Eureka, which does the same thing, but puts in permanents. Interestingly, Eureka can put in Planeswalkers, but since the main goal of the deck is to do Hypergenesis, we're not playing any Planeswalkers currently. And then we play Show and Tell and Sneak Attack. Also, just pretty cheap cards. Everybody, well, it was Show and Tell. Show and Tell is like kind of the mini Eureka or Hypergenesis. Sneak Attack is only for you, but it's a very powerful card. Lets you put out any creature from your hand for 1 red. It dies at the end of the turn, but you can usually get some good value out of that. Now, the deck plays, since we play a ton of fatties, all the fatties. Honestly, if you do a Gatherer search and just search up like rarest creatures, then convert mana cost down or whatever, that's like half this deck probably, very easily. So I split the creatures up into a few categories. We have like creature removal creatures, because when you cast Hypergenesis, each of your opponent gets to put into play stuff too. So you kind of need cards, you need creatures that are so big but then also impact the board in like a significant way that you're actually still slowing down your opponents. You have to make the Hypergenesis better for you than it is for them. So in this slot, we have quite a few here. We have Angel of Despair, Angel of Serenity, Ashen Rider. Those ones just take out permanents. Bogarden Hellkite and Dragonlord Atarka. Those ones do they deal 5 damage as you choose, so you can hit a good amount of stuff off those ones, or go straight to the face if nobody's played anything. Magister Sphinx. Target player's life total becomes 10. I don't know. I guess this is like player removal or something. It's a dirty card, but whatever. I don't care. Terrastodon, Woodfall Primus, hit not permanents or whatever, if in different ways. And then Ulamog, both Ulamogs, old and new. When you cast them, they exile or destroy a permanent, so that's pretty useful. And Zakama, as much as Zakama you might not necessarily cast in this deck, Zakama is actually pretty modal and has like the abilities to bolt creatures or destroy artifacts and enchantments for 3 cost. So Zakama, I think it's a giant 3-headed dinosaur, but it's actually a little more useful than I think I initially thought when I put it in. And then the next group of category of creatures would be sweepers. They like take out a lot of creatures at the same time, not just specifically targeted ones. We have Balefire Dragon. This is when it deals damage. Nukes their board, deals 6 damage, most likely, or more, I guess in some cases. Bane of Progress, because since all your opponents are putting out stuff, you'll probably hit a lot of artifacts and enchantments. I mean, you tend to hit a lot of artifacts and enchantments in Commander anyways with Bane of Progress, but even better here. Elish Norn as just the +2/+2 for your creatures is not really that relevant, but the -2/-2 is hugely relevant to your opponent's creatures. Takes out a lot of their creatures. And Eldrazi, obviously, when they attack, the old Eldrazi have Annihilator triggers, so Annihilator 4, both of them. So an opponent having to sacrifice 4 things is pretty backbreaking, especially in the first couple of turns of the game. Then we play the next creatures I put into Protection. It's a little bit dirtier section, but whatever. We play Avacyn to make all your stuff indestructible. Azor, because of his silence effect. It's not a hard silence, but it's instants and sorceries, and that prevents you for board sweepers for 1 turn. And he's still a 6/6, and he does have Sphinx's Revelation on him, so whatever. I guess if you have the mana for it. Blazing Archon, creatures cannot attack you. So this kind of forces your opponents to attack each other until they get rid of that. Imperial Archangel redirects all damage from you to the Archangel, so that means kind of gives you a buffer of people having to attack your Archangel first. Gisela reduces half the damage taken that you take, and then doubles the damage your opponents take. So that can be pretty swingy in the game. And then Iona, I know I already feel the salt vibing, but she's a giant 7/7 angel, and your opponents can't cast spells of chosen color. When she comes into play, choose a color. So it's a little dirty, but whatever. And then Void Wind Owner, another super salty card. Your opponents can't cast spells with even mana cost, and your opponents can't block with even mana costs. It's not anything specifically targeted. It's just if you can nuke half their board, or sometimes their whole board, or sometimes it doesn't even affect them. But it's very, you usually get something out of this, and it's it's 11/9. It's a huge body. I also play the next section would be Disruption. I have Avatar of Slaughter in here because generally you have the biggest creatures on the table, and if you make it so all creatures have double strike, your opponent's creatures have double strike, your creatures have double strikes. If yours are bigger, they obviously kill the other ones, and all creatures have to attack each turn if able. So this can be pretty painful for your opponents because they have to start swinging into each other, or swinging into you, and that nukes all their creatures. We play Jin-Gitaxias. This half of Jin-Gitaxias is just that each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. This locks your opponents out of their hand, so they have to put into top deck mode. He's only a 5/4, but that effect is too great. He has other abilities too, so make him really good. Sire of Insanity falls into the same category where you just get to nuke everybody's hands. And then Lord of the Void, you get to exile cards off the top of their library, and then you get to put a creature from their library into play on your side. So this is like you get to deal damage, then take their things. So if they're hoping to draw into something relevant, that's going to be a little bit harder. And Sheoldred, Whispering One, the Black Braider, she each of your opponents have to sacrifice a creature on their upkeep. So if they only put out one big fatty, I mean, you're probably going to be able to hit that fatty pretty quick this way. And then on your turn, you get to take one of their creatures out of their graveyard. So she's really powerful too. Big impact on the board. Next category is card draw fatties. So we play Demon Lord Belzenlock and Jin-Gitaxias again for his card draw. Kozilek Butcher of Truth, draw 4. Prime Speaker Zagana. Typically when you enter play, she's never the only one coming into play. Alpha Hybrogenesis, so you're looking at drawing like 9 cards or something. She effectively works as a wheel at least. And then Razakast, just because of the Demonic Tutor on his deck. I count that as card draw. Whatever. And then we have just the last category is just like straight biggies. The big fat creatures. Blightsteel Colossus, Inkwell Leviathan, Legion of the Tangle, turns all your lands into 8/8s. Maelstrom Wanderer for haste, and also if you cast Maelstrom Wanderer, you get the double Cascade trigger, super good. Progenitus, protection from everything. Sphinx of the Steel Wind, the Achroma Sphinx, and Achroma herself, the first one. And World Spine Worm, just because it's the biggest, giant, dumbest mono green worm in the game. That when it dies, it turns into 3/5/5 worms, so it's huge. Those are all the significant creatures we play, and then we play Omniscience, obviously. It's a big swingy spell that really takes over games when it's played. The biggest turns I've had in this game have been Omniscience plays, where usually you can get then some additional cast triggers, and maybe you wheel or draw some more cards and cast all those, and maybe you can draw a little bit more and cast those too. And you end up with 120 power on turn 3 or something. Those are obviously the biggest plays of the game. And that is functionally the deck. For the mana base, I'm running every dual land and every fetch land, and then every rainbow land, and then a couple shock lands. This is not necessary. I play them because I have them. If I didn't, there's definitely probably budget options to do it this way, or to do it a different way. And that that could definitely be something that would be talked about at a later time. Budget Jodah Genesis. And then, interestingly, I don't remember if I said or not, but this deck is entirely 1v1 legal, which I didn't have the intention of making that way. It just kind of happened, and it's because a lot of the cards that are banned in 1v1 format, like Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, and Demonic Tutor or whatever, are not in this deck because I can't play anything that costs less than 3. So, strangely, this deck is entirely 1v1 legal, and I think it probably is better 1v1, to be completely honest, because you can almost most likely completely guarantee that your creatures will be bigger than one player's. Now, when you're playing in a bigger group setting, obviously this gets a little more dangerous, and now you have 3 other people at the table or 4 other people at the table, and that there's a chance that their combined might be able to kill you. So I mean, that's a drawback of this deck, but it's spicy, it's fun, and I recommend anybody take a crack at it, take a whirl with it. Fun stuff.